Hi, I'm Brennan Decima, owner of Decima Wealth Consulting, and today I'm going to share a client story that still haunts me, right? This was a massive plan that just fell apart, that eats me up to this day. I constantly replay what I could have done differently, how I could have approached it, how the client could have approached it. I'm going to give a disclaimer. I'm not here to say you need any products or solutions or if it makes sense for you, but I do want to just kind of touch on how we fit in and where this story just was the complete opposite of everything we believe in here at Decima Wealth. So I am a strong believer that wealth is a tool and it should be there to create a better outcome for your family and yourself, right? So when we work with clients, we spend a lot of time, not just on the front end, but over time, understanding what purpose they want their money to pay. And how does that look? So it really focuses around what we want to protect against, right? How do we want to protect and preserve our wealth? So there's some common ones. How do we protect peace of mind and limiting downside more than a client can handle? How do we protect quality of life and create income that allows them to live their next chapter in a way that they feel confident in? How do we protect against taxes and avoid spending more on the IRS than we have to? How do we protect our family where the wealth creates harmony and is a blessing and not a curse? It doesn't create family tension and drama. And then, everyone knows that they're going to die, but I would say the one thing that everyone's concerned about, but no one wants to discuss or plan for, unfortunately, is protecting against our own incapacitation and decline. And I'll be vulnerable here. It terrifies me, the thought of losing my memory or not being able to take care of myself. That's a really, really scary thought. And it is for a lot of people I work with as well. But the statistics are sobering. 7 out of 10 people will need assistance with some type of daily activity in their life. So statistically speaking, odds are really high that long-term care is going to be necessary, right? But no one wants to discuss long-term care. Insurance has a stigma. Full disclosure, I'm not an insurance agent. I'm not selling you long-term care. I just want to discuss the importance of protection. But here's the client story. So client was widowed. She was in her 60s. She had 2 kids, no grandkids, son and a daughter. She had relocated to Florida with her husband when they retired. Husband passed away, so he passed away young, right? Husband had done a great job setting her up for success. She had $6 million. Her expenses were low. They had a pension and Social Security that covered the expenses. Beautiful home on the water. So in every definition of success, she had it, right? So she had assets, she had income, she had a controlled budget, she had a beautiful home that was paid for on the water. Yet the plan failed. And how did the plan fail? Nothing to do monetarily. There was more money at the end than when we started. And I'm not saying growing wealth is a failure, but here's where it failed. So when we went through the protection piece, her income was protected, right? So we protected quality of life. She could do everything she wanted to do. We protected the balance. She didn't really care if she grew the money anymore. She felt she had reached the finish line. She couldn't spend what she had. She didn't have grandkids. She had no philanthropic goals. Giving her 2 kids a couple million and a house felt really, really sufficient for her. And she shared with me, since her husband passed, she didn't even talk to the kids. They never picked up her phone call. They never visited. When she tried to visit, they would make up some type of excuse of why that wasn't a good time for her to visit. So she just felt really isolated, really lonely. And she came into my office and we had been working together, but she comes into my office and prior to this meeting, we had gone out for dinner, and this should have been a red flag at the time. She had been drinking. She repeated herself a few times, and I just chalked it up to she had too much to drink. But after that meeting, she had shared how lonely and depressed she was, and I went to visit her at her house. It wasn't hurricane season. She had hurricane shutters on. Her house was pitch black, which I can see how you can become depressed in that environment. But when I asked how long the hurricane shutters had been on, they had been on since her husband had passed away, which had been years. So she had been living in a complete black hole on the water in a time of grief, which I just can't even fathom, like heartbreaking situation, right? Um, but she didn't remember in this meeting going out to dinner with me. She didn't remember my visit. So I got her daughter's phone number, left a voicemail. Daughter called me back. I explained my concerns, and the daughter just didn't believe me. She said, "My mom's in her 60s. There's no way she's losing her memory. Like, you're wrong." And I asked when she had talked to her, and she hung up on me. So client leaves the appointment, and a few minutes later calls me hysterically crying. Hysterically crying. And I thought it was about the interaction in the office when we tried to call her daughter. It was not. She had been driving home. She had lived there for years, and she had no idea how to get to her house. She was completely lost. So I went and picked her up. She wasn't in a great state to drive. So I called a taxi for her, drove her car, taxied back to my car. I'll shorten the story here, but in a nutshell, the kids were the beneficiaries. She did not have long-term care. She believed she had more than enough money to self-fund, and she did. Unfortunately, by not planning for what happened if she becomes incapacitated, that decision when she became incapacitated was taken out of her hands. Her daughter was the durable power of attorney. Her daughter came down for 2 days. She did not want to deplete her inheritance. The son never came down at all. He was probably on board with the sister because he never picked up my phone calls. But they put her into a facility that was one of the worst places I've ever seen. She went from a $6 million nest egg and a beautiful home on the water to being put in a room that I'm not sure the air conditioning worked with 3 other roommates. And then she passed away, a year later. So the kids ended up getting millions of dollars in this home while their mother rotted away in conditions that just were nowhere near her standards. So does that mean that you need long-term care? Absolutely not. You may, but what I think is more important is really walking through if something happens to you before death, if you become incapacitated, what do you have in place to help you control what happens next? How do you protect your financial independence? How do you control where you go and who's making that decisions? Is there a conflict of interest between beneficiaries and the person that's stepping in to put you in a facility? And we'd all like to think that the person we name has our best interest in mind, but there was no clear guidance on here's where I want to be. But they put her in a facility locally and never came to visit her. They lived up north. So writing and having in clear documents your plan, to me, is a non-negotiable. So if you need help really focusing on your next chapter and protecting your loved ones and protecting you, I would love to hear from you. You can schedule at my website, www.decimawealth.com. And let's hope none of us ever have to go through a story like this again. Thanks for taking the time to listen. I hope you have a great day.